3 reboots or remakes that I have zero connection with the original material, so that should be interesting to talk about. We've also got some big name stars coming to television, including Jeremy Renner, Will Ferrell, and Paul Rudd, and a brand new game show to talk about on Game Show Network. Let's talk TV. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to TV News and Reviews for the week. We've got 6 new shows to talk about. As I mentioned, 3 of them are reboots or remakes that I have never watched the originals of, so it will be interesting to look at these from a perspective of newness, and that is Dexter: New Blood, Cowboy Bebop, the live-action version on Netflix, and then The Game returns to this time Paramount Plus. We've also got The Shrink Next Door, starring Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, Jeremy Renner in Mayor of Kingstown, also on Paramount Plus, and a brand new game show on GSN called Tug of Words. I love to talk about game shows. But first up, of course, we've got to talk about the news. I do want to remind you, if you are brand new to Dan Reviews It, you're just finding this video, stumbling across it, I would love if you'd consider subscribing down below there to my channel. Would love to have you aboard. All right, so let's talk about the series endings. I have no renewals for the week, so we jump right to the series endings. USA's The Sinner, with one of my least favorites, Bill Pullman, is going to end with its current season that's airing right now, season 4. So in December, when that finale for the season hits, that will also serve as the series finale. And so what's interesting about this is USA, you'll remember, like maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, was huge for original cable content. In fact, they were churning out hits like almost nobody else probably in cable at that time. Monk, Psych, Suits, Burn Notice, like all of these. But they now only have one original left after The Sinner leaves, and that's Chucky, which they actually share with Sci-Fi. So they have a few original, I think, reality shows, but in terms of scripted fare, Chucky remains their only show left, which is kind of wild. Dirty John is awaiting to hear its fate. That technically has not been canceled, but it hasn't been on in a couple of years, I think, either. So, all right, and then also ending over on OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, Queen Sugar is done after the upcoming Season 7. Season 6 is coming to a close now. Production is going to begin early next year for that one to debut in 2022. And this was a very, I'm not really familiar with the show. I've heard of it. But it is very, very female-focused. In fact, through 6 seasons so far, 42 different women have directed episodes of the show, 39 of which made their directorial debut with an episode of Queen Sugar. Oprah Winfrey is one of the executive producers of that, and it's currently OWN's longest-running scripted original. Not of all time, though. I think one of the Tyler Perry shows beats that out, maybe The Family That Prays. All right, and then we've got some news about upcoming and announced programs. Netflix has picked up another NBC cast-off first. NBC canceled Manifest, and Netflix picked it up. But now NBC has passed on this project called Blockbuster, a straight-to-series comedy from with Randall Park setting the star. Of course, he's from Fresh Off the Boat, and he's done a few comedy films. It's going to be an ensemble comedy that takes place at that last Blockbuster in America. It's going to be a 10-episode series. And what's interesting about that, of course, is the dovetailing with the Netflix documentary, The Last Blockbuster, which Kevin Smith, I guess, directed. But in any event, it wasn't a Netflix original, but it went on Netflix early in the pandemic, and people have just been finding it through that. So there you go. So it makes sense that Netflix would pick that up. But Netflix sort of has a history of picking up NBC's leftovers, because Kimmy Schmidt was originally an NBC show that they passed on. So Tina Fey and Robert Carlock brought it over to Netflix, and there you go. And that's, by the way, why Kimmy Schmidt is a clean show. And all the episodes are regular show length, like 23, 25 minutes. And it's relatively clean. So, all right. Anyway, Christoph Waltz will be starring in a series called The Consultant. That's for Amazon Prime Video. It is from the creator of the show Servant, not M. Night Shyamalan. He's just an executive producer, but this guy, Tony Bazgalop, created Servant, and he is now creating this, The Consultant. It's described as a darkly comedic workplace thriller. That's interesting. That explores a sinister relationship between boss and employee, and it's inspired by a 2015 novel with the same title. Our good buddy Levar Burton is going to host a Trivial Pursuit game. There's no channel involved yet, but Hasbro is going to be producing it along with entertainment company E1. And they've had a few TV adaptations of Trivial Pursuit so far. There was one in the early 90s that I vaguely remember, hosted by Wink Martindale. And then there was a syndicated version that aired in 2008, 2009 with Christopher Knight from the Brady Bunch. I kind of vaguely remember that one, too. I don't know if I ever watched any of these, or I just remember them existing. But look, I'll be honest. I don't think LeVar Burton was a very good Jeopardy host. I watched all of the guest hosts. I do think, Maya Bialik was among the top 2 or 3. So I love that she ended up, getting at least part of the job, along with Ken Jennings, who was one of the other ones. But LeVar Burton, I think the pressure got to him. He wanted it so badly that I just don't think he was very natural. But look, I love the guy. Who doesn't? He's, one of the most beloved people, I think, around. He taught us all how to read, so there we go. Trivial Pursuit game show, absolutely. Let's give him a go in that slot. And maybe without the legacy to live up to, maybe he'll find his natural way with that. All right. In other Netflix news for odds and ends, the streamer is changing officially the way it will report its top 10 lists. So we've sort of been reporting on this ongoing here on the news and reviews. And they recently decided, okay, instead of counting 2 minutes as a view of the show, which I always thought was stupid, they're going to change that to, minutes and hours accrued. And so we're going to do our thing that way. So that means if you watch those 2 minutes of a show, it doesn't count as watching the show. It counts as watching 2 minutes of the show. But if you watch the whole hour-long show, then that counts as 60 minutes. And so they'll add it up like that. And so, a few of these shows have gotten into the billions for a week. Squid Game was one of them. But this is, I think, is really interesting. As somebody who always likes looking at what's in the Netflix top 10, like myself, this will be interesting. So the top 10 lists that you see on the homepage are now going to be supplemental on a website that's going to show the top titles in over 90 countries. And the rankings, like I said, will be based on the total number of hours viewed for a specific title. And then every Tuesday on the website it changes, or on the app rather, I should say, it changes every day. But on this website, it's going to change once a week. Every Tuesday they're going to put it in. But it's going to also have 4 global top 10 charts. So not just the 90 charts for each country, but then a global top 10 that will include English language. There'll be another top 10 then for non-English language. And then as well top 10s for each country. So I think that's very exciting. Then there were some people winning the Rose d'Or, which I was unfamiliar with, but apparently this has been going on for 60 years. I know the Palme d'Or from, I guess it's the Cannes Film Festival, but the Rose d'Or is for TV. I never knew this was a thing, but French superstar Omar Sy is going to receive Performance of the Year for his show Lupin. Again, Netflix, we keep talking about it. And I think that's pretty cool. That was a great show. But I thought this was even more exciting because I loved this show. The Rose d'Or Emerging Talent Award, given to up-and-comers from the global television scene, this year went to Nita Manzoor, who is the creator and director of We Are Lady Parts. I reviewed this back when it came out on Peacock, and I gave it an A. It's one that I actually was able to sit down because it's only a half hour and 6 episodes. So I was able to sit down and just watch the whole thing, and I loved it. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year. I think it was this year. Now I'm having a hard time, but I don't think it was 2020. I think it was this year. So, but I gave it an A. I love this show. So I was very happy to see that. All right. Then in Lizzie Kaplan news, I feel like at this point in time, I should just dedicate the own category to Lizzie Kaplan, because last week we talked about her in Fatal Attraction. They're going to be remaking that. And then now I have 2 Lizzie Kaplan stories to tell you. First, she is going to star in another new show. It's going to be on FX on Hulu. It's called Fleischman is in Trouble. and it's based on a best-selling novel about a marriage gone wrong. She's going to play Libby, the narrator of the story and longtime friend of the title character, Dr. Fleischman. Jesse Eisenberg is set to star as Fleischman himself. So we love that. Lizzie Kaplan will star in 2 shows coming up, but what she will not be appearing in is the Party Down reboot, which is coming back to stars with nearly all of the full cast. Lizzie Kaplan is pretty much the only one not joining because she's got these 2 other projects in the work. But Ken Marino, Adam Scott, Jane Lynch, Martin Starr, Ryan Hansen, and Megan Mullally have all closed deals to return for a 6-episode revival of the cult favorite. I have actually not seen Party Down. I do have the DVDs. They were like $5 or something at some bookstore, and I was like, well, I love all these people. I've heard of this show. I'm gonna get it. But I had never had Stars. I actually just yesterday got a 6-month for $20 thing on Stars for their Black Friday deal, so I can watch some of these new shows coming to Stars that we haven't covered yet. BMF is one of them, and I think there's one more that just kind of landed a couple of weeks ago. But I added a few new streamers to my list because of all these Black Friday deals. AMC Plus was $199 for the first $199 a month for the first 3 months or something, and then Showtime as well had a good deal for add-ons, which is how we're talking about Dexter New Blood this week. Next week, by the way, on Showtime, we're going to talk about Yellow Jackets, which is getting a lot of buzz. No pun intended. But anyway, Party Down was on Stars, and it was a big cult favorite. I just recently read a list of the 100 greatest shows of the 21st century, and Party Down was on that list. It was, I forget who made it, but one of the magazines. And so people love this show, Party Down. It's a quick binge, I feel like, because I think the other seasons are only 10 episodes, half hour each. So I may do a nice binge on Party Down before this new one begins, because I do love all the people. Megan Mullally. This was post Will and Grace, too. Like, I just love that she did this show, after she was so famous from Will and Grace. And Jane Lynch, it was on after Glee. Or actually, it might have been on during Glee as well. Come to think of it. But at any rate, that's sort of Lizzie Kaplan news, because she will not be joining the reboot. And that's sort of also this week in reboots, I guess. All right, so that's it. That's it for the news. Let's go into the reviews now. We're going to start actually with what I think is probably the most talked about show of the week, and that is The Shrink Next Door. This is Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell, of course, from Anchorman. They're reuniting here, and it's based on a podcast, sort of a true life podcast about psychiatrist Isaac Hirschkopf, played here by Paul Rudd, who I can't really go into too much detail because I feel like I know what's going on here, but I'm not sure. But I watched the first 3 episodes of this. This is on Apple TV Plus, and basically Will Ferrell plays one of his patients, Marty Markowitz. So yes, this is a very Jewish-leaning show, and we get some of the classic New York Jewish accent, but mostly not from those two, mostly from Catherine Hahn, who, of course, we love. She's such a chameleon, and we've loved her long before Agatha on WandaVision, but she plays Marty's sister, Phyllis, and we love her in this as well. This is a very, very interesting show, and it's one that I recommend strongly giving more than 1 episode. Apple TV Plus always puts up the first 2 or 3, I think usually 3, for their shows, so you can watch all 3 at once and then go to the weekly format, which I think is smart because it gets you hooked, and then you want to watch every week. But the first episode of this, I was really left wondering how I felt about it, because we're still getting to know these characters, and they're not all likable. In fact, in many ways, none of them are likable. But they all are quirky enough that you're like, okay, well, maybe I don't hate this person. I just don't understand them, or I just need to know more about them. So that's where episodes 2 and 3 come in, and we learn a bit more about everybody. 3 mains, and there's a few, extra people as well. Casey Wilson, formerly of Happy Endings, is here as well as Paul Rudd's character's wife. But this relationship between Ike and Marty, it's questionable as to how ethical it is. It's certainly questionable for the Catherine Hahn character. She is looking out for her brother, and she's very, very worried that this is a bad sort of relationship here, even though she's the one who pushed Marty to go to counseling in the first place. This is what I would call a dark comedy. Some of these other shows that are pitched to us as dark comedies, for example, speaking of Apple TV Plus, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt show, Mr. Corman, which I enjoyed, but it ain't a comedy. And it was billed sort of as a comedy drama or dark comedy. This is a dark comedy. There's a lot of funny moments, but a lot of very dramatic moments. And as well, there's certainly some mystery here at play as to whether this doctor is on the level. I have my doubts, but I don't really know. It could be Marty who's not on the level, or it could be Catherine Kahn's character who's on the level. This is a show that could go in many, many different directions. I didn't listen to the podcast, so I don't know. I don't know if it's a pretty faithful recreation. But I will say one of the biggest detriments of the show is those accents, because Paul Rudd, and I love him so much, he's one of my favorite working actors, but his accent really slips in and out. Will Ferrell, I'm not sure, is necessarily going for one as much, but I think that's kind of odd because his sister, played by Catherine Hahn, is very, very accent heavy and very authentic to, I think, the area of New York that they live in. It's funny, I'm watching an old 1940s and 50s show, The Goldbergs, not the current one, of course, but back in the day they did a Goldbergs and took place in New York, and the characters were insanely Jewish with the thick accents that we sort of associate with that New York area. And Catherine Hahn is nailing it, and everybody else is sort of like struggling to hold it together. So I have to dock at some points for that, but I'm very intrigued as to where this is going. But you have to, I think, make it through the first episode to really sink your teeth into the show. I think 2 and 3 is going to either hook you or not. If you're not in by the end of the third episode, then give it up by all means. But by the end of like the second episode, I was hungry for more and curious about where this was going. And a couple of times I certainly thought there was a zig coming and it zagged. So I have to give it points for that as well. So overall, I did enjoy this show. Very intrigued about where it's going. I give The Shrink Next Door a B+. So up next, we go to Dexter New Blood. This is on Showtime, and I think there are 3 episodes now that are up, because it airs on Sundays, so I think the third episode was just a couple of days ago. But I only watched the pilot of the original Dexter. I've never had Showtime in my life until I just bought the package the other day. But back in the day, CBS ran a few episodes of Dexter over the summer to entice people to buy Showtime. And it was a sanitized version because it was on CBS, so there was no cursing and the blood was minimized a bit. But even then, I was like, oh, this is a little too gory for me, too gruesome. That was 15 years ago. Ever since I've been doing like Film Fanatics and reviewing all the shows, I've seen everything now. I don't really, I'm a bit desensitized to it. But back then, I didn't watch stuff like this. And so the murdering was very visceral. But I knew enough about the character. And I also knew how, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I also knew how the original show wrapped up, because I had a few friends that were very invested in it. And so when this new one was coming, I was like, okay, like, how did you feel about the finale? And they told me some things that happened, and I said, okay, that's fine. So, but what's interesting is I think you almost need some sort of background on the show's finale, and certainly the character to at all be invested in this. This is not one, and we'll talk about a couple others later in the show here, that maybe you don't have to see the original or know anything about it. But this, I feel like you do. I feel like it's pretty important, actually. So this takes place in real time, so about 10 years after the fact here. And at this point, Dexter is living as a different person. He faked his death, and he's living now as Jim Lindsay. And here we are, in this new persona. He hasn't, murdered anybody in 10 years. The one thing I really did know about Dexter is he is a murderer, serial killer, but he does have this code of ethics where, he kills only people that really deserve it. Either they've killed themselves, they've killed other people, or whatever. But that's kind of all I knew. And it's good to arm yourself with that knowledge going into this. But anyway, he's living this new life now as Jim Lindsay, and he's got this gal with him, Julia Jones, who is a local sheriff. And I don't know how much I want to say to even spoil this first episode, but he does have a long lost son who factors heavily into the show. So I guess we could say that he does show up in this pilot episode for the new series. But basically, without going into too much detail, I guess we'll just talk about the show itself. That's all I'll really say about the plot. But I will say, unlike what I sort of assumed the original show was, which is sort of like different, killing a different person every week kind of thing, murder of the week. At the end of this first episode of the season for New Blood, there's like a 2-minute, like, this season on Dexter New Blood. And it seems like what happens in the first episode is going to be a story-long, or a season-long arc. And I don't feel like that was what the original was like, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Showtime was certainly, no stranger to the serialized dramas. Weeds certainly had season-long arcs, so maybe it's just par for the course, and I'm incorrect. But I'm certainly intrigued by this season's mystery, let's say. Also, how things may unravel for Dexter and his true self being revealed, because, of course, the whole town knows him as this guy, Jim. So I'm interested to see, how that develops, especially with his girlfriend, the sheriff. I think the acting here is good. Michael C. Hall, I liked, way back in the 6 Feet Under days. I think that's where I first saw him. And he definitely looks older. This is clearly, remember when they redid Arrested Development and it was supposed to take place like the next day after season 3, but it was 10 years later, so everybody looks way different. This looks, they didn't make up him to look, younger or anything. He looks a bit grizzled. But he seems happy with his life, the character, and I think that's good and interesting. And I think as we move on, we're going to find out what's been happening the last 10 years. Overall, I was very pleased with how this turned out. I think there were a lot of interesting character choices that the writers and the producers made to sort of bring everything from the finale into the present. And I can't really say any more than that without giving away more about the original finale. But I think you do need to know about it to be involved at all. Like, if you come into this fresh, don't do it. You're I think, going to be a little confused and lost. So overall, I did like this show, though. Dexter New Blood gets a B from me, and we'll see how the season progresses. All right, up next, another big one with a big name, Jeremy Renner and Kyle Chandler in The Mayor of Kingstown. This is on Paramount Plus, and this is a Taylor Sheridan show. You may know his name because he created Yellowstone, which is literally the biggest show on television right now. We talked about that last week in the news portion. But we follow the McCluskey family here, including Jeremy Renner as Mike, Diane Weiss as Miriam, and Kyle Chandler as Mitch. And they basically are these very powerful people in Kingstown, Michigan. They're not actually the mayors, but they essentially are. It's sort of a, mayor in name, or in not in name, but in position, basically. They really are working heavily with the jail system and the incarceration system, because that is the only thriving industry in the town. So, there's a lot of heavy themes here, as you would imagine. This is a very heavy drama. I liked this show. I was a bit surprised when I went on Rotten Tomatoes and it was like 45% or something, because I actually kind of liked it. I don't think it's amazing, and it does one thing in the premiere episode that is becoming all too common in recent dramas, and without giving away what happens in the first episode, I can't really say what goes down, but it's a trope that is becoming a bit too commonplace, and it's interesting for storytelling, but in terms of Well, I'm not going to say any more than that. It's interesting for storytelling, but not so great for fans of some of the talent on the screen. I think that probably gives enough away. But anyway, so Jeremy Renner's sort of the star of this. This is his town, and he is the man in charge. Whereas Diane Wiest, his sister, teaches at the local prison, but she's, got no time for any of these people. She's not a nurturing teacher. She just is doing it for the paycheck and to sort of get on the inside of the prison system, sort of work their magic that way. A lot of intrigue here, a lot of gunplay, a lot of violence, a lot of things going down in this town. I can say that. It's a dreary show, and unlike Mayor of Easttown, that's Mare. Her name is Mare. This is Mayor of. Personally, I would have changed the title because Mayor of Easttown is so popular. Now it's Mayor of Kingstown. Come on, change the name of the town or something. But in any event, a little lazy. But in any event, unlike in Mayor of Easttown, which was dreary as well, we got a lot of character development right away. We really kind of felt for these characters. Here, I'm not sure yet. Everybody kind of seems like a jerk off, but I can't be sure yet. we haven't delved in deep enough to know. But this is a family you certainly don't want to tangle with. I think they're definitely going off of some Wire vibes, some Sopranos vibes, for sure. But look, the acting is good here. And I think this is, another one in the long line of these sort of, tragic tales of cities and towns that have just gone by the wayside and are just completely morally bankrupt and corrupt. And I think there's some interesting things to look into here. I don't think it's treading any new ground. But I'm not quite sure what it is about it that the critics are hating on. 45% for me seems a bit low. This is certainly a positive grade for me. Not super high up there with, Dexter and the Shrink Next Door. But I actually really enjoyed this show. But it's not an easy watch. I could not watch both episodes back to back. I had to take a little break because it was just like it's too heavy. It was like bumming me out, But I leave Mayor of Kingstown with a B-. I think it's certainly acceptable. So up next, we're going to go to Cowboy Bebop. Here's another one that I have never seen 1 second of the original anime. It's one of the most popular animes ever. My good buddy in college was all over this thing, and he told me I should watch it. My buddy Joe, who comes on my channel frequently, he has told me for several years now to watch it. Of all the animes, this is the most palatable and that kind of thing, he will say. But it dates back to the late 90s. And I don't know if this is one of those animes with like 600 episodes. I don't think it ran that long, but it's certainly highly revered. So this one now is a live action version on Netflix. John Cho is the star of it. We love him, of course, from Harold and Kumar and the short-lived show Selfie and many other things. He's really the only name that I knew, though, from this show. You've got Alex Hassel, Daniela Pineda, Mustafa Shakir, people I don't really know, but they were fine in this. So this is set in the year 2171, and it's focusing on these bounty hunters, played by many of the names I mentioned, chasing down criminals across the solar system on the Bebop spaceship. So this is essentially a space western, which is never really my favorite genre. Star Wars is considered a space western, and I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. It's fine. But I don't worship it. But this is a case of, from everything I know about the original, this is a case of you don't want to have watched the original before you watch this, because apparently the setting is the same and the basic themes are the same. But from the couple people I've talked to that have watched it, and Joe put a video up, but I haven't watched it yet because he gets very spoilery in his videos, so I should do that. But from what I understand, those that really enjoy the original anime are going to hate this because they've stripped away a lot of what made that anime great. But lucky for me, I have no connection to the anime. So for me, this was actually pretty enjoyable. Now, it's very, very stylized. It clearly takes from Tarantino and David Lynch and a lot of these more sort of oddball directors that have very specific, shots or angles or focuses or, specific music cues that are a little off the beaten path. It is clearly heavily borrowing from a lot of that stuff. But for me, this actually was a pretty enjoyable ride. And I think they're half-hour episodes. I mean, it's pretty quick to get through them. And stylistically, I think it works. The set pieces are fun and interesting. And the very first scene, the first actually like, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes, takes place in this arcade on the spaceship. So, it has an interesting motif and some fun set design. And John Cho is, I think, always enjoyable. I don't think he gets enough credit for, being kind of a good comedic actor. And he sort of lends some levity here to the proceedings. So overall, I guess I would say from what I understand, if you like the original anime, if you know a lot about the original anime, skip this one. But if you don't, and you just see it in Netflix's top 10, you're like, oh, this looks interesting. What is this? I think you'll actually have a pretty good time watching it. Now, it doesn't live up to, your Tarantinos and stuff. And clearly it's I don't know if it's an homage or a blatantly, ripoff, but either way, I enjoyed a lot of what I saw on the screen. I thought it was fun, interesting characters. So I leave Cowboy Bebop with a B. Moving on next to The Game. This is another show that I have zero history with. It was originally on UPN, I think, for one season before UPN folded into the CW, and then it was on CW for like 3 more years. But then they abandoned their comedies altogether and went with the hour-long dramas. So then it went to BET after, I think, a year hiatus. So Paramount Plus now is the home for The Game. So this is now the 4th network that this show has been on, which is just wild. I do believe they're actually counting this as season 10, but it's been, I think, 6 years since the old show ended. So for all intents and purposes, for this reviewer, we're calling it a reboot, because it's not all the same people either. But in any event, again, I knew this show existed, and I was a fan of its predecessor, Girlfriends. This is a spinoff of the old Tracy Ellis Ross show, Girlfriends, which ran in syndication for years and is actually very funny. And so this version does not have a laugh track, which I thought was odd, because when I watched it, I was pretty sure the game, even though I'd never seen it, was, because it was a Girlfriend spinoff, was of that laugh track studio audience variety. And so I clicked on a couple episodes on Paramount Plus, and yes, both the CW and the BET versions were, using laugh tracks and stuff. This changes that dynamic, and gives us basically a complete, single camera look and feel. And so I don't even know where to start here. I guess we'll talk about the characters. So a lot of the original cast is not here. Tia Mowry is probably the most famous person from the game, but she is not in it. But Pooch Hall as Derwin Davis, he is on here. Wendy Raquel Robinson is back as Tasha Mack. Who else? Some of the other people. Hosea Sanchez as Malik Wright. So this is about football, and about sort of, betting on football and managing football and the players and contracts and all that sort of stuff. Sort of think maybe like a Jerry Maguire-esque sort of thing, although it's not really about the agents or the superstars themselves. It's about sort of their lives surrounding that, and sort of the women that are involved. But to be completely honest, I kind of liked this show. I didn't quite know what to expect. All I really knew was that it was a long-running sitcom, from Girlfriends. But if you have this is one unlike Dexter. If you have no knowledge of any of the past, whatever happened on Girlfriends on BET or CW, you don't need it. that you could go into this completely fresh. And I'm sure there are winks and nods all over the place that maybe enhance your viewing experience. But this one acts more as a drama. It's got comedic moments for sure, but I think to do this in front of a studio audience or to put a laugh track on it, I think would actually be a little out of place because this is a darker version of the show. Of those episodes from the old days I watched, I only watched maybe 3 or 4 minutes of the CW one and then one in like season 5 on BET, just to kind of get the feel of it so I could, a little bit compare and contrast. This is definitely a darker version, but it's soapy. It's got a lot of those sort of winks and nods and like, yes, we know this is a bit over the top, but here we are. This is the lifestyle of these people, and Fox has this show, Our Kind of People, from earlier this season that I really kind of bashed on, did not care for it. The game, I think, gives us the positive side of that, the more well-done side of that. Yes, these characters are over the top for the most part. Tim Daly, by the way, is in it. I don't know if he was in the original or not, but he's in it here as like one of the agents, I guess. But I actually kind of enjoyed watching this. It was kind of fun. And they never get, even though they're on Paramount Plus and they have, carte blanche to kind of say what they want, I didn't feel that they ever got too, naughty, dirty, except for there's one strip club scene. And there's no nudity in it, but there's definitely some things happening that I don't think even BET probably would have aired. So it's definitely a little bit more bawdy than the original was. But I sort of like this. I think if you are like me and Our Kind of People on Fox didn't quite work for you, but you do sort of like that soapy, sort of over-the-top Empire type thing, I say give the game a try over on Paramount Plus. And I believe all episodes are up now. Paramount Plus usually puts all of them up. All right, so let's see. Just one left, and this will be a quick one because usually I don't take too long talking about game shows, but I do love game shows so much, and GSN has another new one for us. It's called Tug of Words, and it stars Ahmad Rashad as the host. And look, Game Show Network has done very well with their wordplay games. Lingo, Chain Reaction, they just recently brought back. So in this one, 2 teams compete against each other basically to do word clue questions. You'll have 3-letter word, and Ahmad Rashad will give you a clue and it will change 1 letter. So for example, if your first word is con, C-O-N, the next clue might be he polices your streets, so you change the N to the P and you say cop. And then maybe the next one is you eat corn on this, cob. And as they go on, round 2 has 4-letter words, round 3 has 5-letter words. And basically, you are trying to get more points than your competitor's team to bring that flag of the tug of war back over to your side. So it's pretty basic concept, which I don't mind a basic concept, but I don't really care for Ahmad Rashad as a host. I don't think he's very natural. I don't think he's very funny or clever. And at one point, I think he just like straight up talked over, like, they interview the contestants. He basically like talked over what the girl was saying. So, look, I only watched 1 episode of this, so maybe there are other ones where he eases into it a little more natural. But kind of a lame host for me. The game itself is kind of fun. I think it's a little too basic. And the final seems incredibly easy. You have, I think it's 60 seconds to do like 10 of them or something. And they're a little harder, but like it's still very easy. And the other thing I do think is interesting though is it's a back and forth with each player on your team. So the same person can't answer twice for the clue. So if you have a real dum-dum as your partner, you might be screwed because they're just sort of, muddling along here, not coming up with answers. So, but I guess it's better than having one person say everything. So overall, this was kind of enjoyable, but I really did not like Ahmad Rashad as a host. And I think the gameplay is maybe a little bit too simple. So I'm going to give Tug of Words a C-. All right, so that's it. Short and sweet this week. Next week, we will definitely talk about Yellow Jackets. I know it's been on a lot of people's minds lately. Big popular show. Critics are apparently loving it. I keep seeing, now that I have the Showtime add-on, I've been watching a few of the shows, and they always have a promo for Yellow Jackets up front, and the critics are just raving about it, apparently. So we'll watch that, and many, many more things. I'm still kind of a week behind from a couple of months ago, so as we get into the holidays here, I'm going to try and watch some of these shows I've missed. And now that I have the Stars add-on, I think I'm going to watch the BMF finally, the Black Mafia. So we'll see. All right. Anyway, thank you for watching. We'll see everybody next time. Bye.